And we want to begin by acknowledging that as a community, we live, we work, play, and worship on the traditional, ancestral, and unsurrendered lands of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Secwepemc, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. For us, that means that our words and our actions will reflect our awareness and our appreciation of this, and we will pursue right relationships with the original people of the land with respect and gratitude. And as I said, I'm delighted to welcome you to this exhibit called Honoring Creation. We were using creation as both a noun and a verb, and these 5 remarkable artists who I'm delighted to welcome and introduce you to, each of which expresses that in their own unique way. So we were very excited to have a multi-artist show. It's also the first show that uses our entire new gallery space. So we're very excited. So I'm going to just introduce them, but let them say a bit more about themselves when they speak. Kat Aldred, and Rikki Kooy, and Todd Giihlgiigaa, and Kerry Baisley, and Hubert Barton. And we're delighted to have them. We give them a round of applause. And I'm going to let them interact with the question that we asked them, which was to talk a bit about how their spirituality informs their creativity, and then likewise how their creativity informs their spirituality. So I'm going to pass it over to them. I'll time keep. I'll give you a heads up when you're getting close to time, and we'll let you begin, Kat.
Thank you. I love going first. It's ironic that today I'm talking about my art and kind of my as it connects to my healing journey. Just because I'm struggling with some chronic pain right now, so that's why I get to go first. But thank you so much for coming. My pieces are actually just right here, and I read, or if I get up at the end, it's not because I'm pissed off at anybody. I'm just gotta switch seats. So thanks. I just wrote a little bit, kind of to introduce you to myself. I'm Cree and Métis from northern Alberta. Some of you may know my dad. His name's Aldred, and his boss. So in the end, we're all related. My art journey is a healing one. Starting in high school, I had spent the better part of my life struggling greatly with a poor self-esteem and my own mental health. But I've always been a creator of art. And what I didn't know was how to use that art as a God-given healing balm for my trauma and a way to connect to my own Indigenous identity. For the longest time, I thought my art wasn't good enough and I had nothing important to say. So for the most part, I put my art aside to pursue academics. It was accidentally that I fell back into it 10 years later. It was COVID, and I found myself, as many others, unemployed and struggling significantly mentally. So to pass the time and to battle my anxiety, I began experimenting with traditional Cree style of art. Bold black lines, bright colors, and florals define the style of my art. The majority of my animal paintings also have 3 orbs in them, representing the Trinity, and the lines representing the energy that connect all things. I also began researching traditional meanings of different animals, including exotic ones like the sloth. And I turned my designs into greeting cards with the paintings and meaning on the back, which I planned on bringing today, but unfortunately won't be available. It was a love of creation and divine intervention that brought me back to a place of peace, mental stability, and forgiveness. Not all at once, but one mark, one brushstroke, one painting at a time. And it was my Indigenous identity that gave me the appreciation for the sacredness of all living things. Expressing the joy and movement of the animals I paint encourages me to seek that same enjoyment in my own life. And hopefully I can pass this love and joy for God's creatures, great and small, to others. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Flachwach Twaitsnachen, Spirit Elk woman from the Secwepemc Nation, where my father was from. And my other name is Giihlgiigaa, which means frog, in the Lil'wat nation that my mother came from. Spirit Elk woman is who I identify with very clearly. I enjoyed art. I can't remember when I picked up a pencil. But I remember at 11, leaning over the back of the couch, staring out at the trees in November, and drawing it by pencil, and that's all I had. And I was satisfied. What informs my art, I think, is an amazing knowledge within me that I was loved. Things weren't perfect, but I knew I was loved. And part of that expression came through in my faith belief now. And that is the love that I feel from those that care for me, but most of all for my Creator. What informs my art is a very strong faith belief, but just a strong belief in an amazing culture that I got to know a little bit of from both my parents that were residential school survivors. And so it's been a couple of generations that we've gone through that. But I sit here as a great-grandmother with great joy that the goodness of creation that can rise up. I am thrilled to be here. I see the different faces. And my heart is so happy. Thank you that I am part of this. I'm definitely the great-grandma here, and I'm dang proud of that. And I have my man that I've been with for 59 years, that's the great-grandpa of our family and great-grands, and he's here with me. And today he's wearing a shirt that says feather dance. What is feather dance? It's a partnership with this very church body, and particularly the most beloved Reverend Melanie Calabrego, where she and I partnered together on something that we call feather dance, which is an act of reconciliation as we understand it, an Indigenous and settler coming together in a good way to share. And what is feather dance? She asked me about visioning something for her for the liturgical robe. I said, let me pray on that. And I got a vision of 3 feathers dancing. And the 3 words when I woke up, love, purpose, and reconcile. I still tremble inside, because that's how real it is to me. What informs my art is deep love, deep faith, deep care. And I expressed it in different ways when I was younger, but the textile art has always been an ongoing thing. I remember creating a bathing suit out of an old dress because people want to jump into the swimming hole. And our neighbors want to drive us, and I didn't have a swimming suit. I've been creating in different ways, and I'm not quite the wild craft that some people are. But I think if we allow our imagination, coupled with faith, a strong purpose, and a desire to bring beauty. Beauty has been something I very much treasure. So I look around this amazing place of St. Faith's Church, St. Giihlgiigaa's Chapel, and I thank you that I am able to express who I am and who I believe God to be. When you look up there at the Art and Soul Gallery, that big altar covering in black with the hummingbirds, that expresses a hummingbird is our healer. Eagle represents to me the mighty creator and all his purposes. I'm a frog clan from my mother's people, and we're the spirit helpers. And always we have our hands of friendship. We always have the three feathers of love, purpose, and reconcile. I could tell you a story for each piece, but I can tell you that personally. But please know that every piece has been done with a thought. I've had people come in, I've commissioned desks from me and things like that. I did the turquoise and white hanging on the wall here, eagle with the cross, and again on the bottom, and as my husband Jack knows, when I felt that nudging of the Holy Spirit to cut a hole right through, I held my breath and did it anyway, because that allows the light to shine. That's a little bit about me, and I'm just so grateful. And I can tell you more if you like it. Thank you.
Gwa, Lawegian, Nisga'a, Hinudikaang, Dihatagan. I'm Haida, and my Haida name is Nisga'a. I go by an English name, Todd, and I'm part of the 60s scoop. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself, how I came to weave. It was through a vision in 1999, shortly after I found my mom in 1996. It was 28 years since I'd seen her. And so how do I express myself as a Haida? I had no clue. I don't know anything about drawing or illustrating, which is usually a prerequisite for carving. So, well, can't do those, I guess. I get a headache every time I draw. So what's left is storytelling and basket weaving, and I don't know anything about basket weaving. At least I didn't at the time. I went through college to become a relational database programmer, you know. I was doing pretty good, and people were stealing my code, and it's like, okay, my life is falling apart, what do I do? I was living in Winlaw at the time, which is between Castlegar and Nelson in the interior here, about 6 to 8 hours. And I looked to the mountains and I said, look at me, see what I need. I'm human, can't do this alone. And later that week in 1999, I got a vision of the old woman of the forest. I was attending a doctor's estate in Winlaw, and she had a little cabin in the back 40. And I just left the house empty so it would never get dirty, you know. I didn't have to keep it clean. And I'm there one evening going to stoke the fire because she had a little wood stove in that cabino. And it's about, 6 or 7 like it is now. It's getting cold, right? And so I'm going to stock the fire for the night. And I look out the window, and it goes all silver like a mirror on me. And then there's this woman standing there in the mirror, and she's silver too. She's got a silver robe, silver staff, beautiful silver hair, and she's standing amongst these trees at an intersection. like two paths crossing. Oh, hey, how's it going? No answer. So I go step outside. Yeah, the garden's still there, everything's still there. Come back inside, look at this picture window going, what's with this persistent mirage? I don't know anything about that. So I was raised, part of the 60s scoop by two Christian families, Dutch Christians, Dutch Orthodox in the foster family and Dutch Reformed in the adopted family. That's how I got my De Vries name. And they said, if you're ever in the front of something sacred, you bow your head. Okay. And then I look up, and she's gone. The whole image is gone. I can still see the garden. I said, okay, I wonder if I insulted her, by kind of not looking at her. And so I phoned up Skidegate Museum. Hi, anybody Haida's helped me with this dream, a vision, a waking dream. They all asked me if I was in drugs. I said, come on. No, I'm not that kind of guy. They said it's for you to figure out. Not much help. So I went to Google, because 1999, Google was what, 3-4 years old? 1994, I think Google was born, right? Okay, Old Woman of the Forest, Native American tale. And I get an answer. Yeah, right on. Some native person put out the story of Junakwa, the Old Woman of the Forest, that if you ever encounter her and you live to tell the tale, you'll be given the gift to teach weaving. Okay, what do I know about weaving? I already told you I don't know anything about weaving. Why would I give the gift to teach it? So that really confused me. So when I got back to Nelson, I went to the library and grabbed the book, Cedar, The Tree of Life by Hilary Stewart, to the Northwest Coast peoples. Hoping maybe I would see some instructions on how to make a basket. Instead, I found on one of the pages how to harvest cedar bark. And so being in Nelson, I went up to up Silver King Mountain, which is behind Nelson, behind the Silver King, what do you call it? There were 3 parts of Nelson, Silver King, so I went up Silver King Road, went up the Silver King Mountain, out Give Out Creek Forest Service Road, about the 3-kilometer mark, quite high up in the mountains, and I figured, hey, there's this little trail going up. Like a skid trail, when you throw logs down onto the main road. And I didn't want to try harvesting right in front of it, all these ATVs and motorcycles and 4x4 trucks going by, what are you doing here? I don't know what I'm doing myself yet. So I better gonna go up 100 yards, maybe 50 yards, and I'll experiment up there. And then I looked back down, and then I saw that crossroads in that vision on the mirror. And then there was the Old Woman of the Forest again. And then I knew who the Old Woman of the Forest was. In our culture, we refer to all the plants as our sisters. So Grandma Cedar is why we call her Grandma Cedar. She's an old woman of the forest. She can live to 800, 900 years old, maybe longer. And they're still beautiful at that age, by the way. Wow, look at her. She's tall, straight, bark comes off real easy. So my spirituality, how is it connected with my art? So from the story of the little girl in the first basket, we learned that Spider came down the Tree of Life and taught the little girl how to weave baskets, our first basket. And it was so that we can get along. So the Spider teaches us how to get along, much like hummingbird or all these other animals in our territories. They all have messages for us. And so from Spider, we learn how to make our first basket. And I can explain that when you ask me more about how we do that, right? And then I express that spirituality our Haida spirituality. I moved to Vancouver in 2010, and I met my uncle, Woody Morrison, and he taught me everything Haida, because I'm part of the 60 Scoop. And my parents disowned me and said, you can go live down in downtown East Side. We don't need you, which was a good thing because she shoved me right in my uncle's face. So I learned everything, all the cultural imperatives and values of the Haida. So I'll be sharing cards so you guys won't forget what those Haida values are. And I got some more information back there that you can read and request more copies of. So I'm really glad to be here with these other artists, sharing our spirituality and how similar it is to Christianity. How my spirit is touched.
My name's Kerry Baisley. I'm a bit old school, so the paper is here. So I was born in Treaty 1 area, which is Treaty 1 territory. I have Métis ancestry on my mother's side from the 3 times great-grandmother, Margaret Spence, who was Swampy Cree, and the 3 times great-grandfather, Andrew Sutter, was from the Orkney Islands. So talking about being all connected, I thought I'd begin with a quote from Ray, your dad. So, treaty means that your identity is bigger than just you. So some of you have heard me say this before. In the European North American world, when you hear the word treaty, that usually means a document developed after the end of a war. In the Indigenous world, treaty is connectedness, identity, support and maintenance of right relations. So looking at that idea of treaty means your identity is bigger than just you, I thought it could mean 3 things. First, we can all be more than we can ask or imagine. Second, let's not take ourselves too seriously. And third, we are all connected. Everything is connected. So the bags you see upstairs that I was working on helped me to try and connect a series of what might appear to be random thoughts, which I'll try to explain. And I know my family members think that I think quite randomly, so I hope this will make some sense. While working in the Synod office, I developed a deeper awareness of the connection with the earth, Mother Earth, the source of everything we need. And I also learned that in making offerings to the earth, that the idea of making offerings to the earth, plants, and animals is for thanksgiving for all those gifts they give us so we can live. If you have not met a lot of Indigenous people, First Nations, Métis peoples, very practical people. What I noticed a lot of them was that when they would have their offering bags, many of them would hold their tobacco in Ziplocs. And I thought, we could do a little better than that. Do you have a Ziploc, Todd? No. So while exploring the heritage, looking at historical items, you'll notice that if it stands still, a Métis will beat it. Yes. So there's a thing called the octopus bags. So looking at those and decorative beadwork and how women apply those things to use every day, I got the idea of trying to make some what I call offering bags. So the bags you see tonight upstairs are from old blue jeans, because we're taught you don't waste, repurpose. So they're beaded or resist dyed using natural dyes. Some of the strings are leather and some are hand braided. The one bag at the bottom, it has a whole bunch of things coming out the top. That's sort of my homage to the octopus bag, only all the things coming out of the top instead of the bottom. So the hope was that the bags would honor and hold offerings that we give to Mother Earth, plants, animals, fish, all those things that give us the gifts we need to keep alive. And here's my second set of random thoughts. So when you go, imagine yourself, if you haven't done it, go and look for a place to do it respectfully. But the image I'm going to give you is berry picking. So when you go berry picking or fruit picking, consider how you work and what you do. If you consider moving from a harvesting perspective to one of what I call gathering. So don't get me wrong, harvesting is not a bad thing in itself. My grandfather was a Manitoba farmer, so I know all about harvesting. But let's explore the difference when it comes to berry picking. Gathering versus harvesting. Gathering is selective. Don't take the first, don't take all of them. Take only what you need. Also, when you get involved, gathering can be more interactive if you want it to be. You can engage with the berries, engage with the plants, talk to them, give thanks. Gathering's an intentional process where you're aware of their relationships and our connectedness. So M.A. Craft in her book said treaties are marked by respect, reciprocity, and renewal. I was hoping that these bags could assist us in our treaty relationships with Mother Earth and all living things. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, thank you all for being here. It's an honor to be up here with all of you guys. My name is Hubert Barton. I am from the Nisga'a Nation, which is located in the north coast of British Columbia. I am from a community called Giihlgiigaa, British Columbia. I live right at the mouth of the Nass River. So if you've ever been to the north coast, even if you're familiar with the geography of British Columbia, Alaska would be right here, British Columbia would be right here. There's a panhandle that comes down out of Alaska. My community is right at the tip of the panhandle. So I live right at the mouth of the Nass River. I live where the river is, if you just go over the mountain, you'll see the ocean. We're surrounded by mountains. We're surrounded by wildlife. It's still very much untouched by the outside world. It's a very beautiful place. Up until a few years ago, maybe 5 to 10, we still had dirt roads. We didn't have any cell phone service. People communicated by local VHF radio. It's very peaceful and quiet. You could literally stick your head out the window and hear 2 rivers just rushing by you. You could hear the eagles screeching in the air as they soar in the midday afternoon. So that's where I'm from. And so a lot of my photos, if you've had a chance to look at them, you'll see I shared some of my photos of my homelands, the Nisga'a Valley, and I also shared some of my photos from Vancouver. So I grew up in my homelands for most of my life, and I moved to Vancouver in 2016 to study at the Vancouver School of Theology. And I contrasted some of my homelands, because I exchanged like the mountain ranges and the northern lights and the starry skies for the city lights and the city skylines. And I've always been curious about photography. I've always enjoyed it. I remember the very first time I went out, I got curious about photography was I had a tiny little digital point and shoot camera, no much bigger than this, but very archaic. And I had a friend on Facebook who would constantly share pictures of the Northern Lights, and it felt like almost daily. And he was giving like photo tours of the Northern Lights. And I started asking him questions about it, and then he encouraged me just to go out and use what I had. And so I had a tiny little point and shoot camera. It was a little Panasonic DMC F25. I had a tiny little 3-inch tripod, and I discovered that it had a night mode on it. And so I literally went out at 1 a.m, I checked the tide. It was high tide, it was a full moon, and I just went out and started taking pictures. Shortly after that, I got blessed with my first official DSLR camera, and I've just been kind of taking photos ever since. And when it comes to the creativity and the spirituality and creativity of it, sometimes it happens in the moment, sometimes it happens after, sometimes I'm just out there just to go click, because it really does calms my mind. It clears this space, which can be unkind sometimes. And I'll share a story when I've been very blessed to travel in recent years, and I've gone to Hawaii a few times. And one of the photos you'll notice on the top right over there, it's the long exposure of a little island called Rabbit Island on the east coast of Oahu. I went to go visit a friend, and we went to He's also a photographer. Our styles are totally different, but we just went out to spend the day together. He shot some of my long exposure style, and then I shot some of his, what he calls the mundane. He enjoys taking pictures of everyday things. And so we got up. I remember I went to bed early that day because we had to get up early. I think I was awake by like 3 in the morning. He came to pick me up by like 3:45. And then I hopped in his truck and we went for a drive to his university at one of his schools he worked at because he went to go, I needed a tripod. I didn't bring a tripod with me. And then so we picked up the tripod and then he took me to the eastern side of the island and it was still dark out. Everything was still quiet, still peaceful. The island was asleep, the people were asleep. And then we arrived to this spot and it was like pitch black. You literally couldn't see anything in front of you. Like you couldn't see anything in front of your face. It was just so dark. And it was also really foggy. It was really foggy and it was really cloudy. And we came to photograph the sunrise. So we were like, did we get up this early for nothing? And then, so we were just sitting in the car and we began to prep. So then I said, let's hope for the best. And I remember we shared like just a small little prayer. It wasn't even like anything big or magnificent. It was just, please God, we're here for the sunrise. And then next thing you know, like the day started to break. You could see over the horizon, over the water, you could see the sunlight and the orange glare and the purples coming through the clouds. And then next thing you know, the clouds started to break. You started seeing a lot of patches of blue skies and the light began to shine through. And then next thing you know, you see these really magnificent oranges and reds, just like kind of like, it looked like the sky was on fire. And it was the whole scape. And I got super excited. I was taking pictures one after the other, like moving my tripod around, just incredibly excited. At that point, I must have taken at least 30 to 40 photos. And then I stopped and I just looked around and I just had this thought. I'm like, dude, you're in Hawaii. I was like, look how beautiful this is. Look at the sunrise. Look at the beautiful sky. Look at the water. Look at the Rabbit Island. And I just became in total awe of my surroundings. I'm like, you're in Hawaii. Several years ago, that would have been an impossible dream for you. And I also just became very aware of how awesome and beautiful that creation was. Because one of my favorite passages of scriptures is the very, very beginning, when God's in his sandbox and he's creating everything around him and he's speaking things into existence. And so these things I keep in mind when I have remembrances of these during those times I'm taking photos. Because the God who's awesome, which you can just to let there be light, and all of a sudden there's a sun there. There's stars there that he places so meticulously, and he knows each and every single one of them by name. And I just became in incredible awe that, I felt alive, I felt my heart beating, and I felt really close with the land and my creator. And I just became so grateful in that moment. And then I started taking pictures again. But it's just those little moments that I've had throughout my journey of photography. I'm self-taught, and I do it for the enjoyment of it. I'm a hobbyist at heart. This is only my second time doing this type of thing. I feel very honored to be here with everybody, and I'm very grateful that you're all here. And I'm just grateful for today, and I just want to thank Melanie for setting this all up. Thank you all once again for being here, and thank you.